Alright, so last week on Friday, we made a video talking about how the world was ending inside of FISH. At the very beginning, we pretty much went ahead and did a full flyby of all of ROSLIT, showed you guys a couple of interesting things, especially what was going on inside of ROSLIT Volcano, which I mean, at this point is really no surprise that the volcano is kind of overflowing right now. It's been like this for pretty much going now on 2 weeks, but as of the most recent update being on Saturday, which is when we got the whole entire orcas and everything, something pretty interesting happened outside. If for some reason you did go ahead and miss that video, we basically went over to Atlantis. We talked to a bunch of the NPCs that are there, all of the different gods, and they basically talked about how the earth went ahead and split open shortly after the volcano went ahead and erupted. Now we know that the world is going to split open at some point because on February 22nd, we are going to be getting the Mariana's Veil update. This is obviously themed after the Mariana Trench, which we also went over in that video, and there was a lot of questions that you guys had as far as like, how are we going to be fishing underwater? But one thing that is for sure at this point is that we are going to be getting submarines finally, which is something that I did mention would be really cool and something that a lot of people throughout the community have been asking for quite some time now. I've mentioned this briefly in my live streams and stuff like that, but it just makes sense for us to have a submarine. I mean, we have treasure chests that spawn around everywhere, some of them even underwater. We have the whole entire desolate deep area that would make sense to have a submarine to travel inside of there, especially since you have to dodge all of the mines. And it just overall makes sense, which shortly after we ended up getting the oil rig that sort of teases the submarine, as well as whatever this building is right over here, which for the most part, all we know is that it is Dr. Glimmerfin's kind of lab or whatever. But the main reason why the submarine is important is because this more than likely means that we're going to be traveling underwater inside of the Mariana's Veil, or who knows, maybe there'll be another lost city like mentioned everywhere all over Atlantis, or we'll probably have some caves down there, which will be the specific little spots where we'll be able to fish inside of different bestiaries. But I sort of want to squeeze this comment in here from my last video by someone named I Am Just a Regular Ryan. He said, I think it's like you go in a submarine and the owner is a fan of Subnautica, which is fairly true considering, you know, we have things like the Spectral Serpent and, you know, all of that crazy stuff that are sort of references directly to Subnautica. But the part that I found interesting was the detecting multiple Leviathan life forms in the region. Are you sure whatever you're doing is worth it? To a certain extent, that would make a lot of sense for us to have a submarine where we go ahead and travel inside of the Mariana Veil, and like mentioned, very much themed like Subnautica, there could be multiple Leviathans down there. But now let's transition back over here to ROSLIT because as I mentioned before, I told you guys that sort of where it made sense for Mariana's Veil to open would be right over here in the bay. It's an open area, easily accessible, and overall, it would just look really cool in ROSLIT to have a giant crack right here in the middle. Now, if we sort of zoom out here a little bit, you'll probably notice that with this weekend that just passed, there was a giant kind of like earthquake or something that happened here. The lava is actually traveling out of the volcano now, and it's making its way through this little crack right here, where then it travels all the way till right just before the Bay Area. Now, this now leads you to believe that this weekend coming up, this is going to evolve once again, and we're more than likely going to finally see this make its way inside of here, and something is going to be happening underwater in this area. Now, a lot of you guys are reaching out to me about a second oil rig that was available. If you guys aren't aware, the oil rig is completely gone inside of new servers. I'm assuming that that was sort of a mistake. Maybe it was like an older version of what the oil rig is now, and that's why it was removed. But basically, inside of new servers, that oil rig is no longer accessible, which I believe was somewhere around ROSLIT or Grand Reef. It was like really far out there. But now, another thing that you guys mentioned in that other video was about my prediction for basically what the next sort of like big beast is going to be. For example, Ancient Isles, we got Megalodon. Atlantis, we got Kraken. So what is the next one going to be for Mariana's Veil? And I believe that I mentioned for the Mariana's Trench, the sort of mythical kind of creature that is always inside of there and mentioned is the Leviathan. Now, I know so many of you guys are mentioning that we already have a Leviathan in the game being the North Star Serpent, but that isn't exactly what I was referring to. I was referring to like an actual Leviathan, something even named Leviathan. But anyways, one of you mentioned about what the Spirit of Nick says inside of Atlantis, which I didn't cover in that last video, but basically he says everyone thought the Kraken wielded the depths of darkness, yet a greater shadow stirs, untouchable even by the god. Then he mentions you will find out soon enough, traveler, and that's pretty much the entire conversation right there. If we sort of think about it, Mariana's Trench is technically the darkest point. I mean, it doesn't get any really darker than that when you think about it in real life. I genuinely believe that Leviathan is what makes the most sense. And for the most part, it seemed like a lot of you actually agreed with me, which was pretty cool. Now, something a little bit off topic here. If you were in my live stream, you probably noticed that I mentioned about this sort of character that's right over here, which doesn't exactly say the most amount of stuff. When you talk to Willow, all she says is, Zeus, man, if he's real, what else is? The higher powers been leaving clues this whole time. And I was a little confused because I don't remember this NPC ever being here. And it turns out that that wasn't the case. So Willow was basically one of the hippies that were outside on Grand Reef. So the hippies figured out a way of getting inside of Atlantis, but I was curious as to where the other two went and what basically they had to say now. And that's where I came across the second one, which is actually over here in the spawn. If we climb up this statue right here, just sort of come right up here, this is where another one of the hippies is, which is Sage. When you talk to him, he says, if the higher powers are real, then so is their judgment. Better to follow than to be left behind. Again, I feel like this is one of those references towards the whole entire end of the world thing that I am pretty sure is going to end up happening. That volcano is for sure going to erupt, and we're probably going to see ROSLIT either completely change or the Bay Area is going to change. Now, if you remember, there technically was one more NPC, which was Marley. This guy's located right over here, and I actually have no idea what Marley says. So let's find out here together right now. Atlantis is real, man. So what else? The lost cities, the monsters, the gods, were they all real too? Well, obviously, I mean, we're here, right? It's interesting, dude, because they've gone ahead and pretty much like added all this lore in just recently, like the last, I don't know, 3-4 updates. And I feel like for the most part, they've done a really good job on sort of breaking everything down and kind of like leaving breadcrumbs behind to sort of explain what's coming. But overall, out of everything, I think my favorite thing is watching ROSLIT progressively change. This makes the updates so interactive, and it creates opportunities like the video that we're working on right now, where it sort of lets everybody just theorize. When I made that first video, so many of you guys reached out to me and sent me DMs coming up with the craziest theories, and some of them were actually really good. So now what I'm kind of curious on is, for this weekend's update, what are we going to be seeing? Are we going to be seeing changes inside? Are we going to be seeing changes outside? Can we finally see the crack underwater? Will this lava finally make it all the way through and, I don't know, maybe extend the island here when it dries up? There's just a lot of crazy things that could happen, and I have a really good feeling that the developers are planning something really big soon. As always, man, I will keep you guys updated on everything that's going on here on the channel. Really glad that you guys are enjoying this just as much as I am. And let me know your breakdowns in the comment section. Let me know your predictions. I'm all for it, man. I will be going through everything and liking the ones that I think are probably the more realistic ones. But to be honest, man, anything is realistic at this point. If you guys went ahead and enjoyed this video and you want to see more of this, drop a like on it, subscribe to the channel. Don't forget, we do daily fish content here. Turn on notifications so you do not miss those videos and so you don't miss our Saturday live streams. That's gonna do it for this one. Like always, I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.